Most of the time on this show, we spend our time in great mountains and canyon roads and wanting to show you great places to drive. But we realize that a lot of us, this is the kind of driving we do. Stoplights and traffic and people to navigate. It's not necessarily fun driving, but we want the car you're in to be a good place to be. What's great is there are a lot of cars that are set up to be your only car. They do pretty much everything, and they're available for under 30 grand with a lot of options.
Yes, there's a lot of competitors in this segment. These are the lukewarm hatches, the cars that sit in the middle of the lineup, a car that does it all very well, reasonably priced, pretty comfortable. It's got a fair amount of power, and I just want it to run. And so we brought it to downtown LA.
The car you drive every day should be fun, but it has to do the boring stuff too, like commute, be affordable, and haul your groceries.
You can have both, and we'll help you find it. Fun to drive cars and great driving experiences for everyone on Everyday Driver.
Brought to you by Covercraft.
I really look at the Civic as the benchmark of anything, the hot hatch, the commuter, the entry-level car. I mean, after all, the Civic has been around for 10 generations.
Honda has taken the Civic, which traditionally was kind of a simple-looking car, and all of them, even the base car right now, have this really aggressive angular design.
They're actually now kind of standing back and thinking, hey, let's just put it out there and try it. Maybe somebody will buy it. It looks far more aggressive than the car actually is.
The interior on the Civic is a mixed bag. The materials in here are okay, but you can tell this is a cheap car. Now, luckily, it is a cheap car at about $6,000 to $8,000 cheaper than the other two, and an unbelievable amount of storage. There's huge, almost bottomless pockets for everything you can imagine on the doors. The center console somehow is the center console of a full-size pickup shoved into a compact sedan. It's the Grand Canyon of plastic in here. You wouldn't believe how much stuff you can put in this car. And it actually has a good amount of space in the back, not just the back seats, but the hatch itself. This is an all-purpose usable car.
Because again, these three cars have to be comfortable. They have to be a place where you want to spend time. I hate these seats. Commuting for 10 minutes has made my spine hurt. It's not adjustable. I can't increase the lumbar. It's just foam. That's it. A single density.
Paul is hating on the seats, and I don't love them. I actually think the seats are fine. The position is just a little bit odd. The other two have a better seating position, but the Hyundai seats aren't this good.
Just over $22,000 for this car? Okay, so Honda with the bargain here. I'd almost pay $1,000 more for better seats. I could justify that in a heartbeat.
This is the updated Hyundai Elantra GT. It's clear from a styling perspective they wanted to do something that just wouldn't offend. Simple, classy, but nothing grand.
But it looks the most European. It looks the most buttoned down and reserved, yet still got some style. There's some beautiful parts and pieces and shapes to this car.
The interior is a little bit Volkswagen and a little bit Mazda 3. The HVAC system is almost identical to what's in the Mazda, and the stuck-on nav screen looks like the oversized version of what Mazda did. There's a lot of hard plastic done to a price in here, which is okay if the car were close to $20,000. It is almost $30,000 along with the Mazda, and the Mazda somehow hides its materials better, so it feels like a much more expensive car.
Really, this is a $23,000 car with a tech package that looks like a Sony PSP. In a car this expensive, the seats feel this supportive and good. My spine is not hurting. There's lumbar support that I can adjust. That right there is worth the price.
The Elantra GT actually brags about 20% more cargo space, especially with the seats folded, than the other two cars here. It's right in line with, you guessed it, the Golf. The only real misstep, I think, is the actual steering wheel, which has a tacky feeling to it, and your hands, especially if they sweat at all, start to stick to this material they chose for the steering wheel.
Mazda is absolutely killing it with the styling of this car. All these lines around the car are so well resolved, especially the new front end where you see that chrome grille and how it melds into the lights and actually continues that piece inside the headlight.
Mazda's done a good job of making this car feel like a premium product. All of the stuff in here that you interact with, it feels very high-end. I love the central tach. Everything here is easy to reach. It's a really good combination of touchscreen and interaction with actual buttons that have a tactile sensation.
The heads-up display is actually really handy. It doesn't project onto the base of the windshield. It actually opens a clear plastic flap, and then it projects onto that plastic. I want the instrument panel to be a little bit more integrated, especially with the nav screen, but everything else in here actually matches the exterior theme of the car.
The seats here are the best in the group. They are the most adjustable, and they do the best job of balancing between being seats that hold you really well and seats that are comfortable.
And these seats are really supportive. They're great. Now this car is the Grand Touring fully loaded, pushing 30 grand. Which is a lot of money for this segment.
That is a problem. Of course, you could set this up a little bit differently. In fact, right now Mazda doesn't even make what they would call their Mazda Speed version, which would be the enthusiast version of this platform. So this is a classic example of a almost hot hatch.
This car is geared in such a way that it just jumps off the line.
Since this is not the Honda Civic SI, it does with a little less power. It has 1.5 liter turbo engine, but it puts out 180 horsepower and some of the most torque of this group. And because it's a little 1.5 liter with a turbo, you've got a good amount of torque and it will zip anywhere you want to go. It's got great power all the time and it likes to rev like every Honda engine pretty much ever.
Ooh. Then 180 horsepower. It's actually really good for the weight of this car, which is just under 3,000 pounds. I'm pretty impressed, but you gotta wait for that turbo to kick in.
Now, if you don't get the sport version of the Honda Civic, it's the same engine. It just has a little bit less horsepower because it's tuned to run on only regular gas. This is a little Honda engine. It just wants to rev. I love it. This Civic is the only manual transmission represented in this 3. Now the reason for that is twofold. First off, Honda has a tendency to do really superb 6-speed manual transmissions, which is great. The other reason is because if you don't get the manual in the Honda, you wind up in a CVT, a continuously variable transmission, which is mostly awful a lot of the time. The whole reason for a CVT is just supposed to be miles per gallon. What's interesting is that in many cases, the manual is still better for miles per gallon than the CVT. So at that point, let's just get a normal automatic. The biggest surprise for me is just the fact that it's noisy. This is not a quiet car. You hear wind noise, you hear road noise. This is by far the loudest car of all 3.
I want it to sound and feel more refined than it is, but it's just parts and at a certain price point, which you can tell. So I'm thinking to myself, 6-speed manual. Could you commute? Could you do it? Would you get tired? Well, the clutch is very easy. It engages really quickly off the floor, really easy to drive. Todd thinks this is the easiest transmission. I think it's rivaled by the Golf GTI.
This clutch pedal is so light that toddlers could use it, and it has no sense of engagement at all. It's pretty much just down or up. The first few times you use it, you'll probably put your foot through the firewall. It is so light, it will shock you. As a result, you could sit and stop and go traffic in this and never have your left foot get tired. And while it's fun to row the gears in this gearbox, it's just so unbelievably easy, the pedals are placed all wrong.
If you're looking for heel and toe in this car, if you're looking for the right sports car setup, the Civic isn't doing it. Yeah, the pedals are pretty nifty looking, but they're too far apart.
Now, if you're commute driving, what do you care? But if you're a person that you have the skill and you want to use it, this is not a car you're going to use it in at all.
Of these 3 cars, it's the Elantra GT trying to keep up with the other 2. I mean, it's down on power dramatically, and it's not even turbocharged.
160 horsepower, about 150 pound-feet of torque. That is down severely on both of the other 2, and yet you really can't tell. This does a great job of just giving you whatever you need. It's never going to overly impress, but it's just always there for you.
Right there. I'm not saying it feels turbocharged, but off the line, I'm impressed. The transmission on downshift, it's fine. It works great. As a matter of fact, I feel like it takes advantage of the power almost in every gear it every RPM range.
Proving the fact these are almost hot hatchbacks is the Hyundai Sport mode. Now, normally when you're in a car that has a sport mode, you turn it to sport mode. If the gauges change, they go red. In the Hyundai, they go orange. We're almost angry, almost. You kind of don't want to be in orangey sport mode because you don't want to hear the engine drone quite that much. At half throttle or full throttle, it sounds about the same. It doesn't really give you a different personality in the way it pulls, so you just kind of don't use much throttle.
When you really get on it and you've turned it into sport mode right here, it sharpens your throttle response and it really gets after it. See, right there. I could beat somebody off the line that wasn't expecting it, out-corner them, and dash to the next stoplight. Welcome to commuting.
The base version of the Mazda 3 comes with a 2-liter with about 150 horsepower, which is about the same amount of power you get in that Hyundai. You really want to spring for the better engine. This makes this car feel like it's got plenty of power in all situations. This has a traditional 6-speed automatic gearbox, so it isn't a CVT like you find in the Honda, and it is a better gearbox than the one in the Hyundai. But it is a surprising amount of power, and it is the most powerful of all three of these cars, both horsepower and torque.
This car is geared in such a way that it just jumps off the line. Come on. The transmission is getting more spry. For most people who spec this car, this is going to be the way they have it. As much as we'd love to have these cars on a twisty mountain road, that's not where they belong.
Of these three, this is definitely the hidden enthusiast car.
As much as we'd love to have these cars on a twisty mountain road, that's not where they belong. This is their natural habitat. This is the city where these cars are going to be spending most of their time. You've got to avoid trucks carrying I-beams, and of course traffic and taxis and cops and bums in the crosswalk. There's bicyclists crossing in front of you and random people standing in the street. So when we talk handling, this is the kind of thing we're thinking about.
Of these three, this is definitely the hidden enthusiast car. This is the one that if you actually chuck it through a corner, it feels a little bit engaging and light on its feet, just ready to dance around. This is the most agile of all three. The downside to that is the fact that it also feels the cheapest. It is the cheapest, however, it's by far the loudest in here. The ride is aggressive, which I personally don't mind, but a lot of people are not going to be that happy about that.
The steering ratio is the quickest of all three of these cars, and I would like that in all of these cars. It's not compelling enough to make me want to buy the car, even paying the lowest amount for this car. Here's the other thing I'm noticing. The suspension, the ride alone. I don't want to go very fast in this car. Just because you stiffen up suspension doesn't mean it's the right choice. Because again, these cars have to do it all. They've got to be comfortable at some point.
Honda has fitted this Civic with every driving assist you can imagine. One of my personal favorites is straight driving assist. That's right, if the road has a camber to it while you're driving straight and it requires you to put a little bit of extra effort in to keep the car straight, it will help you with that. How much are you not paying attention that you need that help?
From a dynamics perspective, this little car is solid. It's fun, it's spry, it wants to please you, it wants to get up and go.
This Elantra GT gets a torsion beam rear suspension, which is awfully old tech, and typically actually restricts your ride and handling quite a bit. The Sport jumps up to a multi-link rear. Honestly though, it doesn't really restrict this car. It rides better overall than the Civic does. Now it isn't as agile, but it does create a nice ride.
Okay, Nürburgring engineers, you've impressed me here. Going through corners like that, I've got power on around a corner and then over bumps and potholes and sewer grates. It's still comfortable, but it still feels tight and sporty. And it makes me look forward to the N brand with Hyundai.
This car and the Hyundai weigh about the same. They're a couple hundred pounds heavier than the Civic, and they weigh right about 3,000 pounds, which still for a modern car is not very heavy. Now, the extra weight here has gone to just making this a nicer car.
With the Mazda, because it is so refined and it is so good, it does not position itself as the hot car. It just wants to be your friend, and it wants to appeal to most driving styles. What Mazda has done with the 3, and improved consistently throughout the years, is something called G-vectoring control. What it does is reduce the torque through the front wheels a little bit when you're turning, so therefore it feels like the car is responding more sharply.
While most people are doing brake vectoring, they're actually tapping the brake disc to help you with cornering, Mazda said, no, we don't want to do that. What we're going to do is actually retard timing. And their thinking is once you retard the timing of the car, it shifts enough weight forward onto the wheels that helps you turn more. So instead of doing brake vectoring, they're changing how the engine responds to help you handling. That is a very unique approach.
The transition between accelerating and corners and emergency stops and evasive maneuvers, they blend more easily. They feel like the car is kind of understanding what you're doing. Mazda's thinking about the interaction of all the parts and how it handles and drives and makes you feel.
It's interesting that we agree on that. I wonder about the rest, because from there, we disagree a lot on these other two.
And just because you own any of these cars doesn't mean you've got to be relegated to, all right, I'm just getting by, and not the case. Honda knows that they're great engineers, they build great cars, as is proven by this car, but I don't feel like the parts want to get along, and it comes out in the driving experience. And the best thing it's got going for it is the price. And if you like the styling, $22,000, yes, please sign me up.
If your focus is on driving fun, then this is the car for you to get. But if it is you shopping for an all-around, and I think that's what these cars are supposed to do best, the Mazda still does it better than anybody. Actually, I think this one is more fun to just drive than the Mazda is.
So in just about every category, things are right about the Elantra GT. If a car just makes you happy to drive it, with all these things that we're talking about, the steering, the suspension, the way it rides, the fun that it gives you, then that's why you should own this car. The Elantra GT feels like it's got personality. I like this little car.
The Hyundai Elantra GT hits every box, but doesn't do it with really any flair. It's a really good, accomplished car in every major category that is unremarkable in any kind of personality. Honestly, the Elantra GT is the Golf if you're scared of maintenance.
Yeah, the Mazda's where I want to be. It's so comfortable in here. Your friends are going to get in this car and think, wow, this actually feels pretty close to a luxury car. Of all of these, this is the most balanced, the most refined. They've paid attention to the things that really matter the most.
It doesn't mean you can't find a car that's better in some categories. That's true of the cars here. The Honda is better to just drive hard. The Hyundai is a really nice place to be and just simplify and get a lot for your money. But this is a car that is so high in so many categories that it just wins. All right, well, that was different. We don't normally drive the lukewarm hatches. We don't normally drive in a city, stop and go, stoplights.
But you gotta live with these cars.
These are the cars you're gonna drive all the time if you have a huge, like, LA commute.
Yeah,
I mean, we
for sure.
hope you don't, but a lot of you do.
Yeah.
We get it, we've had it, we've done it. You don't necessarily want the hottest thing ever. This is why we've recommended the Mazda 3 so many times, and I have to still recommend it. I still think it's the best in this just under the Hot Boys hatchback segment.
Mazda speed is gone. It is no more.
It's
this
too bad.
Is pretty much as hot as you can get for a Mazda 3.
It is, yeah.
It's the Grand Touring fully loaded, but it's still the #1 choice in my mind for being so cohesive.
It's interesting that we agree on that. I wonder about the rest, because from there, I actually did the Honda #2.
Did nobody look at the Civic and think, you know, it's ugly, we should start over?
Okay. It's not for everybody, but I think it works in the hatch.
I think it's too much. It's a superhero that's not quite there. It doesn't have any powers. But the Hyundai, for me, Hyundai is the little puppy dog. It's scampering along after the other two. Wait for me. I'm catching up. And it is catching up in a big way. It's got loads of personality. The Honda's #3 for me. It's a good car.
It is. It's a great car.
But there's nothing compelling. It's a lot of pieces. Mazda actually thought about making it all work together. Hyundai is learning quickly.
It's the most coherent in the Mazda. I love that we agree on that. Clearly, that's a car we're going to keep recommending. We disagree a lot on these other two.
Yeah.
The Honda is the most dynamic by far. If you're looking for driving fun, I love it for that.
It's the most spry and sprightly and stripped away.
I agree. And
It
of
is
course,
the
I like that
cheapest.
stuff. And it feels it, though.
Okay,
Let's be
but
honest.
yeah,
It does
that's
feel
the
like the
problem.
cheapest
I
car
mean,
here.
all these cars have their faults, but there's something that we love about everything.
Lukewarm hatches, if you got to get a commuter, nice place to be.
The Civic is number 3 on my list. I hate to tell you, but the one that seems like the ringer is not. Honda has work to do, and it's in the refinement department.
This car wins if you want value and just driver interaction. But if you want an all-around, it loses to that Mazda because it's the better all-around.
I dig this car, and I like it because it's not thinking about all the luxury car things, and it's got to, really be this beautiful environment and the badge on the hood and all that kind of stuff. It's just sporty. You get into it and it feels like it wants to move.
This is a B student in every single category, and you don't complain about a B student. That's great. It's just you're also not going to give away any awards.
If you're looking for the car that's still going to be fun, but it's not the hardcore, the sports car that you really like but you don't want to spend time in, the Mazda 3 is your car.
When I want it to be powerful, it can be. When I want it to handle, it will. It isn't remarkable in those areas, but it does such a great job kind of across the board that I have to still give it the win here. This is still the best car in the segment as an all-around.